Good morning. At this time, we'll call to order the Board of County Commissioners for Thursday, November 29. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer.
Here.
Commissioner Allen is absent. Commissioner Klicka.
Here.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Here.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Here.
Commissioner Brown is absent, and Chairman Eilert.
Here. Two members of our commission are in Topeka today. They are members of the Transportation Task Force. In the last couple of days, that task force has been working on their final report. So Commissioner Brown and Allen are part of that task force. Would you join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance this morning? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For those who are present, if you have a noise-making device, if you could turn it to silent mode or off so as not to interfere with our electronic communications, as all of our meetings are streamed online. We do have one special presentation and recognition to make this morning. It's the results of the 2018 United Way campaign for Johnson County, and so we will have some presentations to make at this time. I'm going to ask Jeff Wright of Parks and Rec, Cindy Green of the County Manager's Office, and Tiffany. Is Tiffany here?
She's here.
Pardon? No, you need to come up too. Tiffany Henschel. These were the directors, I'll call it, of the County Employees United Way Drive this year. And so I'm going to turn the microphone over to Jeff, and we will proceed with the recognition.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Commissioners, good morning. Certainly it is a pleasure to be here with you this morning. Tiffany Henschel, Cindy Green, and myself really appreciate this opportunity to share the results and some awards, have a little fun this morning from our United Way campaign. There was great success, but before I jump into sharing some of the results, certainly want to give due recognition to all of the ambassadors that represented all of the departments countywide and all of the 4,000 plus employees that we have. This was an incredible group. They created a great energy to this campaign, brought awareness to the needs, and most importantly, they worked very closely together with their activities, events, and raffles and things that they had to raise a good sum of money for those here in our own community that are in need. So special thanks to them. Cindy Green and I were the co-chairs of this, and certainly want to also recognize Tiffany Henschel, who was there all along the way. Tiffany has been involved with this campaign for 20 plus years for the county, and truly is very instrumental in the success over the years that Johnson County has contributed to the United Way. Jennifer Osmond is also here. Wave, Jennifer, if you would. She was instrumental in the day-to-day work as well as planning for this event, so special thanks to Jennifer as well. And so what we're here for this morning is to share the results, and I shared that our goals for 2018 was to have a minimum of 400 contributors to the United Way, and for us to raise $116,000 in contributions. And I'm pleased to share that we were successful in both of those goals. We actually, by the skin of our teeth, had 401 contributors. So it came down to the wire, but very pleased with that. And that's an increase from last year where we had 378. Our goal for contributions was $116,000. And after the final tally here this morning, we're at $121,896.98.
Wow.
So certainly recognize all the county employees that generously gave towards this great cause. I know it'll be greatly appreciated by many throughout the community. And Brendan Carney is here with the United Way, and I know he extends his appreciation for all the efforts that the county and all the employees made during this. So we have some amazing awards to share here with you this morning, and Cindy Green is going to help me and the chairman pass those out. But before I do, we have a number of our artists here with us as well, and we'd love to have you join us for those pictures when you see your piece of art being held up on display here. We have Brad Freeman, Larry Martis, Jeremy Osborne, Audria Dubbert, and George Utter. George, I understand, can't be here. And then Jennifer B. is here as well. So appreciate all of your efforts and your donation towards this. I know they'll be proudly displayed in the halls of Johnson County. So without further ado, our Power of Caring Award, which was the highest gift per capita, and this is by department. And we'll start from third place and go to second and first in this. And so for third place, for Power of Caring, are we ready? We have Public Works. So Kelly Stahl, I believe, is here. Come on up. And Brian, you're here as well. You might as well join.
Is the artist here?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Come on up.
Come on, you're headed in the right direction, you're right. Here, I'll let you hold this. Why don't you come over here? Yeah, stand right here. Yeah, that's good. That's great. Great job. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And second place for Power of Caring is the County Manager's Office. So Penny, if you wouldn't mind coming up here and joining us for this, this picture and this award. Is our artist here for this award?
Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here and joining us. Can you stand here? Can you kind of hold it? Great job. Thank you very much.
And then for first place for Power of Caring, which again was highest gift per capita, and that is the Human Resources Department. So Sam Veranda and Becky Salter, if you're here, and our artist as well.
Congratulations. Thank you very much. Is the artist here? Not here, okay. Upstairs. Thank you. Congratulations.
So our next category is Power of Sharing. So that would be for the highest percent of employee participation. So again, we'll start from third place and move up. Penny, don't get too comfortable over there. Third place is the County Manager's Office. Is our artist here this morning? No? And for second place for Power of Sharing, it's the Human Resources Department again. So Sam and Becky, if you would come on back up. Good deal.
Great job. I like this. Good. Can you turn around?
Yes, ma'am.
You
And then for first place, for Power of Sharing, and I'm sure they were keeping a close eye on the numbers, it's Budget and Financial Planning. And I understand Robin is here with us this morning.
Congratulations. Thank you very much. Here comes the artist. Hey, great job. Great piece. Can you hold that? Okay. Don't hold it in front of your face. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, our next award is the MVP Award, and that's the largest increase in total dollars from the previous year, which this year was $3,909.50, and that goes to the Human Resources Department. So Sam and Becky, you should have brought a third person to help you carry all this hardware.
Thank you again. Great job. Thank you very much.
So perhaps one of the awards that folks look most forward to, and that's the CMO, or the County Manager's Office competition. So each of the departments countywide were put into teams, if you will, and it was to see who might, what team brought in the most money would have the county manager, Penny, for a day at their disposal. So I'm not sure what all that might include, Penny, but we look forward to hearing what that experience might be like. And so the team was Team Maury Thompson this year. And that included Corrections, Department of Health and Environment, Emergency and Management Communications, Emergency Management Services, Mental Health, Human Services, Elections, the Appraiser's Office, Johnson County Detentions, and the Johnson County Library. So congratulations, Maury. Anybody that's here to represent for a photo?
Do you have other representatives here, Maureen?
We might need a recount because some of those departments aren't Maury's.
We don't need to get into that. It was through a draft.
That's right. Oh, okay. Nobody else?
All right. Here, go to Howard. You guys get in front.
Sure.
Thank you. Congratulations.
And we also had a couple of raffle prizes for all employees, and there's two categories here. So those that were new givers this year, they were eligible for the raffle, and this will be for an Echo Sport, and that will go to Robin Tast of JCDS, and so we'll certainly make sure we get that to Robin. And then for a Yeti cooler, this was for current givers, increasing their gift by at least $2 per pay period. And that will go to Victory Grady from EMC. So we'll be sure to get that to Victory Grady as well. So that's it for our awards. Again, Commissioners, we really appreciate your support throughout this United Way campaign. It's going to a great cause. We brought a lot of awareness to our staff and the community. It was a lot of fun, and a special thanks to all of our ambassadors that worked so hard together to make this a successful event. Congratulations to all of you for achieving both of your goals there. And the real winners will be Johnson County community here. So thank you very much again.
Well, Jeff, Cindy, and Tiffany, thank you very much for your work in making this possible. And thank you to the artists, some outstanding artwork that we're able to share. Appreciate it very much. Great job. Appreciate your participation. And Mr. Thompson, if there's not a stake in your future, I want to know about it. So, thank you all very much. We'll wait a minute. At this time, we'll turn to the public comment portion of our agenda. If there's anyone present who would like to address the commission on an item which does not later appear on the agenda, would invite you to the podium, state your name and address, limit your comments to 5 minutes, and we'll be glad to receive that information.
Terry Clark, and I've already given her my address. Well, after that uplifting presentation, I'm about to bring a downer in here. I've been involved in the last couple of months with the mental health issues in our county, city, state, and their disaster, and even the mental health people that have been involved. And Tim DeWeese said he'd be here this morning, is he?
He was here.
Okay.
Yeah, he's here.
I've spoke with him on the phone at length, Osawatomie, commissioners in Topeka, the governor's office, state reps, senators, Shawnee Mission, which has the only mental health facility in the county, top floor of their building with about 20 beds, KU Medical Center, which is a disaster. Nowhere in our county do we have any, in fact, nowhere in our state, with the exception of Osawatomie, do we have any long-term care for anybody mentally ill. Our entire mental health system is set up on a revolving door. They go in for 3 or 4 days into an acute care clinic, and they miraculously recover. Currently, I believe Mr. DeWeese told me there are 10,000 people that Johnson County Mental Health in one way or another is dealing with right now. And they're all on outpatient basis, yet not one bed for one sick person in the county. Osawatomie has 143 beds, 14 are allocated to Johnson County, 10%. Yet Johnson County is 20% of the population of the state. I saw the news headlines, as a lot of people did, from Connecticut, Florida, California, and it didn't make sense. A young man goes to school with a rifle and shoots first and second graders and kills 32 of them. A kid in Florida goes to school and shoots 15. And the reports we hear, it's guns, it's the left wing. And of course, the media is complicit with them because they hate the Second Amendment and they hate weapons. But after getting into this, I've learned what's going on. These people are crazy. That's why they're on the street, because we have no facilities in our nation to take care of them anywhere. Here we are, one of the richest counties in America, and every one of our mentally ill people that has been through an acute care clinic is on the street. They're driving up and down cars, they're going to liquor stores, they're getting drugs, they have access to weapons. They're out there amongst us, and we do nothing about it. The only people that are mentally ill that get taken care of is when they commit a crime, like the guy that went down to the Jewish Community Center, which my grandson went to daycare there, and he killed 3 people. I saw the guy on television. I don't need 3 psychiatrists and 6 lawyers to tell me he's crazy. He's crazy. Yet we tried him. We wasted a ton of money trying that guy. He should have been put away in a mental facility and left there. John Hinckley shot President Reagan in 1981. He's just now starting to see the light of day where they're going to let him out. 37 years he's been in a mental institution. If you do something to somebody prominent like that, you get expedited right to the top of the class. We have nothing. It's a disaster. If you go down to Osawatomie, maybe a month at the most, and they're back on the streets. A large part of this is driven by insurance, because insurance will only pay for 3 to 5 days. And I've had the psychiatrists in these facilities tell me, and I'm here because I've had my daughter in 5 of these facilities in 15 months. And I keep getting told the same thing over and over. She's sick when she goes in, and 48 hours later, it's a miracle cure. And they'll put her in a cab and send her home. She has problems. She has long-term problems. She needs care. And there's nowhere to turn to. And I told Mr. DeWeese I was coming today. I asked him to be here. I think he'll back up what I'm saying. We don't have a bed. Now, you're going to tell me out of 10,000 people that Johnson County Mental Health is dealing with, there isn't one sick person that needs to be locked up, put away for their own protection as well as the public's? This is nonsense. We have nothing. I see where we've got a building across the way, right out that window, that's scheduled to be tore down as soon as it's vacated. I've talked to all the mental health people all over. Every one of them, all the way to the state, has said that would make a great mental health facility. Structurally, there's nothing wrong with that building. I've been a contractor for 40 years. The brick isn't falling off the buildings. The windows aren't caving out. Will it need repairs? Sure, but this building will need repairs. Every building will need repairs. They need bed facility. They need space. And I asked Mr. DeWeese what he thought about that. He thought it was a good idea. You've earmarked $1.9 million to go to the removal of that building. For what, I don't know. We need buildings. We're always building buildings. I think we've spent in excess of $500 million in Gardner for that facility. We've got a jail right next door that we had to redo the exterior on because it wasn't pretty enough. We're going to spend, what, $180 million across the street for a new courthouse. We went to the extreme of buying an old bowling alley in Overland Park, which has maintenance problems that won't quit, but we had to have that. And yet, do we have one bed in this county for somebody who's mentally ill? No, not one. It's a disgrace. Now, when I talked to staff told me that you all knew about this. I said, yes, but the public doesn't, and I was part of the public. I thought this was a gun issue. I thought this was a problem. It's not a gun issue. It's a mental health issue. And the Kansas City Star might be here today. I don't know. They're just as complicit in this because it's this left-wing agenda. Get your gun, get your gun, get your gun. I'm not telling the truth.
Mr. Clark, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up your comments.
I'm about done.
Well,
I think
5
I've
minutes
told-
are up. I would appreciate.
Well, I'm looking at the thing here, and it doesn't show me any timer.
Well, no, I'm timing it. Thank you very much.
Oh. Any questions? And I'm going to
Okay.
be back every Thursday I can to keep beating this issue to the public.
Okay?
'Cause
Thank you very,
I'd like to save that building over there.
thank you very much. Is there anyone else? If there's no one else to be heard, that concludes our public comment portion of the agenda. I do have a couple of notes for the record. I will be signing the partial release of easements for the Consolidated Main Sewer District due to the removal of sanitary sewer lines at Chestnut Street and Woodland Road in the city of Lenexa. And we'll also be signing an agreement with the city of Leawood for a preliminary engineering study of a stormwater management project known as Stormwater Improvements north of I-435, Mission Farms to Lee Boulevard. That concludes notes for the record. Moving to the agenda. Will the clerk please read the first item?
Item number 1, consider approving the November 1st, 2018 business session minutes.
All were present. Do I hear a motion to approve? Mr. Klicka?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to approve the minutes as presented. Are there any corrections or additions? There being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Next item.
Item number 2, consider approving a supplemental agreement to the existing Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, with the Kansas Department of Transportation, KDOT, for the cooperative planning of the K7 corridor at no cost to the county.
Mr. Pedig.
Good morning, Brian Pedig with Public Works. This item is a supplemental agreement to extend the original memorandum of understanding signed by the board in 2006. Excuse me. This memorandum provides an opportunity for the agencies adjacent to the K7 corridor to meet, plan, discuss their developments and future improvements to the K7 corridor. The supplemental agreement extends the terms, and the memorandum of understanding will automatically renew on 5-year renewals. Now, the The county's role in this memorandum of understanding is fairly small. We have a couple miles of jurisdiction of K7 that's still in our boundaries, and a few spot areas in the Spring Hill area, but it's a good meeting and a good coordination effort, and the county should stay with this agreement.
Questions? Is there anyone present who would like to address the commission on this item? No one to be heard. A motion would be in order. Mr. Osterhaus.
I'll move to approve the supplemental agreement number 1 with KDOT to extend the existing MOU for the cooperative planning of the K7 corridor at no cost to the county.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the agreement. Any further comments or questions? Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Next item.
Item number 3, request for a proposal, RFP number 2018-056. Consider authorizing a contract with Reuben Brown for audit services in an amount not to exceed $103,855 for a period of 2 years, August 1st, 2019 through July 31st, 2021, with the option to renew, including up to a 3% increase per year for an additional two-year extensions of the subsequent years, 2022 to 2025.
Becky.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. Becky Jones with Treasury and Financial Management. Before you today is a request for authorization to enter into a contract with Reuben Brown for audit services. As required by Financial Policy 100.3, the county is required to have an annual audit performed by an independent certified public accountant. In August of this year, TFM issued RFP 2018-056 for audit services. In order to obtain consistent financial reporting and cost savings for both agencies, Johnson County and Johnson County Park and Recreation District stipulated a joint venture. Although considered a joint venture for RFP purposes, the audits will be considered 2 separate engagements and charged to each appropriate entity. Notices were sent to 349 firms. 19 firms reviewed the proposal, and a total of 4 responsive proposals were received. 3 finalists were selected for interviews: Allen Gibson Hulick, RSM, and Reuben Brown. The RFP selection committee members included financial staff from wastewater, airport, facilities, parks and recreation, budget and financial planning, and treasury and financial management. The committee evaluated the proposals, conducted interviews, and provided scores and rankings of the 3 finalists. Less than 2 points separated the top 2 firms. Cost was the determining factor in the ranking. The RFP committee recommends the audit firm of Reuben Brown. Reuben Brown demonstrated a clear and complete understanding of the scope of services, has related experience, and successfully provides similar services to other governmental agencies within Johnson County. Reuben Brown submitted the lowest fee of $100,830 for Johnson County's portion of the 2018 audit. However, due to the extension of the current audit contract through July 31st of 2019, the RFP allowed for an annual cost increase of 3% each year. Therefore, the 2019 audit services contract is in the amount not to exceed $103,855 for the 2019 contract. The contract is for a period of 2 years with an option to renew for 2 additional 2-year extensions for a total of 6 years. The county's portion of 2019 budgetary estimated costs for this service was $128,285. Therefore, the current contract amount of $103,855 is within budget. I'll stand for questions.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that report. You know, we're fortunate to have the quality of proposals that were presented. The top 2 firms that you referenced are both excellent organizations. Yeah. We've received outstanding service from AGH, and I think we'll look forward to the same outstanding service from Reuben Brown. and it was a cost factor in my judgment. And so, thank you very much. Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Jones, I commend you on coordinating, not that you,
Thank you.
but you were part of that, and I appreciate that effort. I think it makes a lot of sense long-term. I did have one request for clarification. It indicated that you have an option to renew, including up to
3%
up
each
to
year.
3%. So how do you determine if it's 3% or 2.5 or 1%? I mean, what's the thought process there?
3% is the industry standard, and so I asked the audit firm, and they agreed that they wanted to increase the 3%.
So it will be 3%, it's not?
Yes. It's not 2.5 or 1, it's 3%.
So it's not negotiable, even though it says up to 3,
Up
it
to
will
3.
be 3%?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Anyone present like to address the commission on this item? If not, it's back for the commission. A motion would be in order. Mr. Osterhaus.
Move to authorize a contract with Reuben Brown for audit services in an amount not to exceed $103,855 as per request for proposal number 2018-056 for a period of 2 years, August 1st, 2019 through July 31st, 2021, with the option to renew, including up to a 3% increase per year for additional 2-year extensions of the subsequent years, 2022 to 2025.
Second?
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the request for proposal as for auditing services as recommended. Any other comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Item number 4.
Consider granting a permanent easement, utility easement, and temporary construction easements for the realignment of 159th Street along the south side of Johnson County Executive Airport on county-owned land, with the compensation for these easements set at $87,800, which was determined by a fair market value appraisal to be deposited in the airport's enterprise fund.
Mr. Otto.
Good morning, Aaron Otto with the County Manager's Office. Before you is a project that's a joint effort being led by Overland Park, but it also touches some unincorporated and parts of Olathe. You can see on the screen, if we blow it up just a little bit, when we can blow it up just a little bit, you can see the runway 1836, which is the north-south runway at Executive Airport. Just south of it, you'll see a red line. That's the part of the road that we're talking about here, or a blue screen. The red line marks where these easements are being taken out in terms of both a construction easement and a permanent utility easement. What largely will happen here, and it's a great benefit to the airport, is that part of this road sits within what's called the runway protection zone. And so the portion that sits directly south of the runway will actually move 15 feet south, and the road will also be lowered. So it will be helpful for approaching planes. You can see if you look to the bottom of that, there's a series of localizers that are a lead into landing from the south. By lowering the runway, that will help kind of deconflict potentially cars that are backed up to that point, headlights being in conflict with those localizers. The overall goal, I think, in the future in 2019 is to work on improving the traffic flow at Flum and 159 with the, I think, insertion of some traffic control there at the intersection versus the 4-lane. But what we're really here today to talk about is the ability to grant temporary construction easements and a permanent utility easement to allow this road improvement, which will help the airport go forward. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Mr. Klicka.
Aaron, I understand the need for the easement. I just need a technical answer here. Who is in fact paying the easement? Is that coming from the city of Overland Park? Or are we paying ourselves for our
I think there are at least
portion?
2 cities involved, OP and Olathe.
And then we have a portion of it too.
Yes, Jeff Osel, Public Works. We have a very small portion of it. Overland Park, or Olathe has several tracks, and there's like 5 tracks across there. And Overland Park might have one of them on the south side.
So we have 2 or 3, 4 different entities, including
Yes.
ourselves, who's paying this easement to go into the enterprise fund.
Yes.
For their deal. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Otto. Anyone present who would like to speak to this item? There's no one, so it's back for the commission. Mr. Klicka?
I move to approve granting a permanent utility easement and temporary construction easements for the realignment of 159th Street along the south side of Johnson County Executive Airport on a county-owned land with compensation for these easements set at $87,800, which was determined by a fair market value appraisal to be deposited in the airport's enterprise fund.
Second.
Excuse me.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the resolution in regards to the easements adjacent to Johnson County Executive Airport. Are there any further questions? There being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhouse.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Next item.
Resolution number 101-18, consider authorizing land record projects for 2019 and 2020 for the Automated Information Mapping Systems, AIMS, in operation within the Department of Technology and Innovation, and transferring and appropriating excess Register of Deeds technology funds from 2018 in the amount of $368,986.50 for these projects.
Yes.
Good morning, Commissioners. John Bartolak, Records and Tax Administration. And this is our annual Register of Deeds Technology Fund surplus resolution, whereby if we have any available funds at the end of the year in the Technology Fund, they may be used for other land record projects. We are asking for the appropriation and transfer of $368,986.50 for non-Register of Deeds land record projects as requested by the Ames Department.
And this will be used specifically for Ames in what regard?
Mr. Shannon Porter is here from Ames. He can address the projects.
Good morning. Shannon Porter, Department of Technology and Innovation, Ames Manager. There's approximately 6 projects that are listed there on the briefing sheet that are all related to imagery of some type or another. Some of those projects, the largest of which is oblique photography, photography taken at approximately a 45-degree angle. That project, all of the projects are used by county departments, cities, utility companies, engineering firms, and various others, school districts and things like that. That being the largest piece of it is the oblique photography. There are several others there, including ortho photography and software related to those.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I don't know if this is directed to Mr. Bartolak or not, but I had a general question, and the oblique project, as Mr. Porter pointed out, is the largest one, so I'll focus my question on that. When I read this, I get the impression because we have excess monies, we have to find a way to spend it, and it has to be spent on projects that support the generally required statutory designated area. But what's the cost benefit of this? I mean, is there demand? What level of demand is there to spend what is that, almost $250,000 on this versus, well, honestly, giving it back to the taxpayers? I mean, is there that much market demand or customer demand to spend on this resource? And I'd like a little bit better understanding of that expectation.
We're going to split the answer for you if we can.
Fair enough.
The statute does not require, we don't have to spend this money.
Okay.
If the money is available from the perspective of the Register of Deeds in terms of use for their projects, if there is surplus available, then other land record projects may use that money for those projects.
And that's what I mean by required. It has to be related. It can't be on incident.
But it does have to be related to land record related projects. And then the value, I'll let Shannon talk.
In terms of the value, we do sell the data, as I said, to those data partners and things that we have. That recovers a portion of the costs of these projects that comes back to the county's general fund. We also receive a lot of benefits in how that's used by the county departments. Specifically, we like to highlight, we've got one of the members from the appraiser's office here in the audience as well with us today. They use it on their 17% review process, and it saves them quite a bit of manpower in the field that they can then utilize that. There's state statutes that allow them to utilize the ortho and oblique in place of spending a lot of effort in the field.
Okay. And there's a logic to that, and I respect that. It's just, I just don't see that kind of cost-benefit analysis. It's just an expenditure, and the way it's presented is, well, these are surplus funds, so let's spend it on what we can versus having an impact on programs. And I wish that it was a little bit more fully developed in that presentation.
Mr. Bartolak, let me ask you this. How long has this statute been in place and this ability or requirement thereof?
The statute was passed, I believe, in either 2002 or 2003.
So it's been there for a long time.
Yes, sir.
For everybody to view. Yeah. Yes, thank you. Any other questions? Again, anyone present wish to speak on this item? If not, the motion is in order. Mr. Osterhaus.
Move the board approve and adopt resolution number 101-18, authorizing land record projects for 2019 and 2020 for the automated information mapping system in operation within the Department of Technology and Innovation, and transferring an appropriate excess Register of Deeds technology funds from 2018 in the amount of $368,986.50 for these projects.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the resolution as noted. Any further questions? Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I will support this item, but I would encourage Mr. Bartolak, especially since I know he's working on developing a strategic plan and the supporting metrics of programs, to start thinking about how we demonstrate the cost benefit of these kinds of expenditures and the impact it has both on external customers and, as Mr. Quarter says, internal customers. I think those are real, but I would encourage us to be a little more determined in our presentation of those opportunities.
Okay. Any other comments? Not, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka. Aye. Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Next item.
Item number 6, RFP 2016-071. Consider authorizing an increase in expenditure authority to the airport's professional on-call engineering services contract with Burns & McDonnell from the current annual amount of $600,000 plus an additional $75,000 for a total not to exceed an annual contract amount of $675,000 through 12/31/18.
Mr. Otto.
Good morning, Aaron Otto with the County Manager's Office. This is pretty clear-cut, and I'll try to be as succinct as possible. A few years ago, Burns & McDonnell was retained as the on-call engineer for the Johnson County Airport Commission. In this last year, in 2018, there were a number of expected large and unexpected expenses, which is what's caused us to be here today. In this last year, we expected $170,000 going to a rebuild of the primary runway at Executive Airport, which we talked about earlier. There was also an unexpected event where we were doing the T-hangar replacements because of the windstorm in 2017 at Executive Airport. One thing that we're trying to wrap up this year at the airport is this environmental assessment, which was started a year and a half ago. That will unlock the lands to the north and east of the New Century Airfield to be used for economic development. Going through that process, there were a couple things that were found that need further scope of work that Burns & Mac was leading for us. And so we've hit kind of the, I hate to say it, perfect storm of having large expected projects, some large unexpected projects like the T-hangars, and then to have an increased scope of work for Burns & McDonnell to try to wrap up the environmental assessment to allow for that development to take place in the east and north side. That's what's got us pushing up against the $600,000 cap this year. And so we're here asking for an increase in that cap one time before the end of the year to let the environmental assessment continue to work on and not lose these 6 weeks roughly of $75,000 up to $675,000.
So the request is for an additional 75,000 to the 600.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Comments, Mr. Klicka?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Aaron, just, I don't necessarily have any difficulty with this specific item, but the question that I do have is, when do we go out for a rebid or open bid or RFP for consulting services such as Burns and McDonald?
Sure. It's typically been on a 5-year basis, and so it was last done in 2016, I think effective in 17. So we're in the second year of that, I believe.
Second year, so in 3 years, it'll be back open to the, to the industry.
Exactly.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I had the opportunity to visit with Mr. Otto briefly yesterday, and I appreciated his clarifications. This is a one-time increase focusing on the environmental assessment and the T-hangers. So is it about half to each of those two programs? Is that what you're saying? And that will put both those issues to rest?
If it wasn't for the increased scope of work in the environmental assessment, we would have been right under the $600,000 this year, even with the unexpected costs at Executive Airport. But the increased scope of work for the environmental assessment is what pushed it up and over.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. 6 months early.
So well, of the 75,000, then how much of that is attributed to the environmental assessment?
That is the last on the list. That's the most recent. So really, it's the environmental assessment, the increased scope of work.
Sure.
So for instance, when we got the scope of work bid from Burns and McDonald's, it went through all of the different steps to get through the EA. But one case, we have to coordinate with the State Historical Office. And they made a request that there are old ammunition bunkers at New Century from the World War II Olathe Naval Air Station days. They requested one of those be maintained in order to get kind of their sign-off. That requires a lot more documentation and coordination work with them. So that's an example of some of that increased cost, is that follow-up when we went through the process to tie up those loose ends.
So it was the T-hangers then that contributed to the...
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Again, anyone want to comment on this item? A motion would be in order. Mr. Osterhaus.
I move to authorize additional expenditure in the amount of $75,000 to the airport's professional on-call engineering services contract with Burns & McDonald for an annual contract amount not to exceed $675,000 through 12/31/18 per RFP 2016-071.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to increase the contract to Burns and Mac by the $75,000 number for the reasons as stated in the presentation. Any further comments? There being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Item number 7.
Please note, the board is sitting as the governing board of Fire District Number 2 for item number 7 and 8. Item number 7, resolution number 2018-4. Consider authorizing to allow Fire District Number 2 to participate in the Kansas Wildland Fire Task Force Program.
Okay. I should note that we do have a quorum of the fire board present. Chief?
Good morning, Jim Francis, Fire District Number 2. This agreement before you is a formalization of a document that allows our fire district to provide services to other areas of the state of Kansas in what we're calling a task force relationship with other responding entities from Johnson County, specifically Fire District 2, Northwest Consolidated, and Olathe Fire. In the event of a large wildland fire where help is needed somewhere else in Kansas, we would deploy assets from this region. Instead of one department sending everything they have, we would send, for example, one truck from each of the entities participating in personnel and deploy as a task force. Therefore, we'd still have resources to cover our own county. This formalizes that relationship.
Okay. Good idea. Yes, Mr. Klicka.
Chief, no problem, obviously, with this item, but begs another question. Do we participate in more of the national events that that are occurring, such as what's happening in Southern California and periodically in other parts of the country?
We have been asked. This year specifically is the first time I can ever recall that resources from Johnson County, other than Fire District 1, that's a federal asset to deploy on forest fires. There was a call for California. How that works in Johnson County, there's conference calls with the chiefs. We find out if, number one, can we do it? How are we going to afford to do it? And logistically, how are we going to get it done? There's too much logistical challenges to overcome to get resources to California when the request was made. So to the best of my knowledge, we've not deployed any assets out of the state of Kansas out west for something of that nature.
And my question is more for information. It's not to, I know troops out there need to be replaced constantly for the intense efforts that they're doing, and it's whether it's the police or fire, it's great to know that we're all working together when we can.
Yes.
Other questions? Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. More of a process question, and I'll direct it to the county attorney. Why can't this be done administratively versus coming to the board for official action, or could it be done administratively? And I'm not questioning, but I'm just trying to understand the process.
There are certainly many things that can be done administratively, but we have not set up the processes to do that. The old bylaws that the fire district board was operating under before remain in place. Eventually, we need to upgrade. A big part of that decision is how we view long-term, how this is going to be administered.
So that's still part of the conversation that's going on. That's fine. That's why I was just wondering.
Mr. Klicka.
Well, administratively, I'd have no problem in the chief participating or involved with it, but I think having it come to the dais like it is, it's at least sending a good message out that we're there. And so whether it's through this resolution or whatever, it's great to give you the support to let you know we're backing you.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Comments from anyone present? If not, back before the commission, Mr. Klicka.
I move to approve resolution number 2018-4, allowing the Fire District number 2 to participate in the Kansas the Wildland Fire Task Force program. Thank you.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the resolution as noted. Any further questions or comments? If not, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer. Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Item number 8.
Consider authorizing the amendment to the 2018 agreement between the City of Spring Hill, Kansas and Fire District Number 2 of Johnson County, Kansas for a 1-year extension in the amount of $720,000.
Chief.
Yeah, this is an amendment to the contract for 18 to carry us into 19 to provide fire and EMS services to the city of Spring Hill. Is a 12.5% increase on this contract. The payment for 19 is $720,000.
Well, good job in negotiating this. Other comments, Mr. Klicka?
Chairman, I want to echo that. Being part of the fire board here, or being involved with the fire board over the last 6 years, Chief, I've gotten nothing but positive comments coming out of Spring Hill and the attitude and the efforts that you've taken to get this thing sewed up. And this is historic for this commission to get a contract like this one from Spring Hill as quick as we have. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Klicka, I would echo what you said. I know it seems like it's probably been a long time coming from your vantage point, but it seems that you've gone expeditiously in the last few months, so good for you. Couple clarifications. So this contract and the costing, is that a full cost recovery model? And I know it's a negotiation in part, but so by extension, what are the performance expectations? How do they hold you accountable, and how do we, or you hold them accountable?
We haven't reached where we need to be yet. We are closing the gap. I can tell you there's approximately $114,000 difference in the revenue collected if our mill levy, general and ambulance fund were applied to the city's contract area assessed valuation compared to what the contract value is. That is something we watch. The gap was much larger. We are narrowing that gap. Our calls do account for, in the city of Spring Hill, about 30% of our overall call volume in that contract area.
And how will that gap discussion evolve from this point forward? Or do you anticipate it evolving?
Well, this is ongoing conversation we have with the mayor and council when we go over the performance measures and the resource allocations in the city, the resource needs in the city and moving forward. Ultimately, the goal in my position would be for the city to join the district. I don't know that that will ever happen. If that doesn't happen, we need to do whatever we can to close that gap because there is a greater demand for resources in their community.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Anyone present would like to comment on this item? If not, back for the commission, Mr. Klicka.
I move to approve the amendment to the 2018 agreement between the City of Spring Hill, Kansas, and Fire District Number 2 of Johnson County, Kansas.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the agreement between Fire District Number 2 and City of Spring Hill, as recommended. Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I will support this effort, and I commend the chief for making progress. I am sensitive to the gap, and as one of our fellow commissioners who's not here would say, I will be keeping an eye on this. It's an important issue, not just for you, but I think countywide, how those services are provided and what the cost and who pays for those services. So keep up the good work, and I will give you a good eye from time to time.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Klicka.
I appreciate the words here, Commissioner Ashcraft. I do want to assure this commission 12% increase that the district is getting is a great step forward.
Oh, I agree.
What's happening is the credibility of Fire District 2 being part of the county is helping that relationship with Spring Hill. Spring Hill has a number of questions as far as details of various parts of the district, but the chief has been providing that as they go, and there's more to come. So, and I've been assured from the city officials in Spring Hill that the conversations with District Number 2 are it's a whole new ballgame, and they appreciate it.
I would agree with that assessment. This has been a long-standing issue, and I think the elements are in place to continue to close that gap. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. That concludes the items. As we said, as the fire board, are there any other items?
No, sir.
Reports and communications, Ms. Postoke Ferguson.
Chairman and Commissioners, you have a number of items before you, so I will highlight them, and then if you have questions, we can go back to them. The first one is the Treasury and Financial Management Department has begun mailing out the real and property tax statements. You have information in your packet, and Tom Franzen's here if you have additional questions. The second item is the notice to increase environmental sanitary code program fees. Lugene Marsh is here if you have questions for that and her staff. The director has the authority to adjust the fees up to 10%, and then the next step is to file it and give you notice as the Board of County Commissioners and publish notice in the official county newspaper. The various fees are attached to your packet, and they range from 0 to 6.7% on the various fees. The board has up to 30 days to rescind, modify, or defer the proposed fee changes. The next item is a BZA, Board of Zoning Appeals decision. Again, staff is here if you have additional questions. The process, this is regarding a setback approval to request reduced front yard setback to allow construction of a new single-family residence on property at 15781 Lake Road 5, and this is in the Gardner Lake area. This is being recommended by staff and the BZA for this variance, and the process is that you have until December 13th to decide whether to call a public hearing or to let the approval become final. The next 4 items are project plan updates, and there's a table on page 2 that summarizes the dollar amounts in those 4 project plans. 3 are in Lenexa, 1 is in Gardner. The first one is the City of Lenexa. On December 18th, we'll conduct a public hearing to consider adopting TIF Project Plan 4C, generally located at the northeast corner of 87th Street and Renner in the City Center TIF District. And you have information in your packet on that. It is multi-story apartment loft building and 10,000 square feet of mixed-use infrastructure. The second is the City of Lenexa on November 6th adopted an ordinance approving the TIF Project Plan 3, generally located south of Prairie Star Parkway and east of future Ridgeview Road. And this is for approximately 38.69 acres of land. The third project plan is, again, the City of Lenexa on November 6th passed an ordinance to approve the TIF Project Plan 4, generally located at Renner Boulevard and 93rd Street. The project plan proposes 315,000 square feet of retail and restaurants in 3 buildings and associated site work. The fourth is the City of Gardner Main Street Marketplace. On December 17th, they will conduct a public hearing to consider adopting the Main Street Marketplace TIF Project Plan Area 1, generally located at the northwest corner of Moonlight Road and Main Street. And this is for constructing a new grocery store and pad site and retail restaurant use. And again, the table there shows the 4 project plan summaries. And then the last item is the City of Overland Park Blue Hawk Star Bond Project Plan. On December 17th, the City of Overland Park will conduct a public hearing to consider adopting the project plan, generally located at the southwest corner of 159th Street and US Highway 69. And so with that, I know I went through those fairly quickly. If there are questions, we can have staff come forward and help address the various items.
Any questions? Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have questions about the TIFs, but I'm not going to ask them because they're the same questions I always have. I did want to maybe ask if I could meet with Ms. Marsh and learn a little bit more about the fee proposals, kind of the basis for the increases, because they range from, I saw Ms. Marsh.
She's here. She's
Okay.
behind. You can't see her because of your line of sight at the podium.
Sometime next, this coming week, they range from 1.4 to 6.7. I was trying to get some sense what the basis of that was, the justification, and if she wouldn't mind doing that, I would appreciate it.
She says yes.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, that concludes the reports and communications. We do have a request for an executive session. We do have agenda review yet to complete. Let's try the executive session at 11 a.m.
Okay. I'm ready if you're ready, Chairman, for the motion. I'll move that the board recess its open meeting and convene an executive session at 11 o'clock a.m. for a total of 40 minutes with a period of 25 minutes for the purpose of discussing personnel matters of non-elected officials and protection of privacy, and for a period of 15 minutes for the purpose of receiving the advice of counsel and to preserve attorney-client privilege, and to reconvene an open session in this room at approximately 11:40 a.m. or soon thereafter, as the executive session may end.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the request for the executive session as noted. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Turning to commission comments, Mr. Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. A couple items to share with our citizens. Had a chance to participate in the Kansas City Power and Lighting at the plaza a few weeks ago, and I think Jason was there as well. That was a very interesting event, a very nice event, and it was a good evening for weather-wise that evening, wasn't it, Jason? Also participated in and had a chance to attend the Greater Kansas City Chamber Annual Dinner with 2,000 of our closest friends, so it was a nice crowd there, and very, very nicely done. As usual, the Chamber puts on a good show for our citizens and our members. And also last night, I had a chance to go, I belong to the Urban Core Group, and they meet on a monthly basis on various buildings around the community that promote adaptive reuse. The meeting last night was held at what they call the Hy-Vee Arena, formerly the Kemper Arena. And if you ever had to have a chance to go into that building and see how they've remodeled that building, to see what they've done there, it is absolutely incredible. The upper level has 6 or 8 basketball, volleyball courts, and the 2 in volleyball courts can be converted to pickleball courts, and they were all in use last night. Lower level has 4 basketball courts or 6 pickleball courts. It's quite a facility. You remember the space the volume was that tall. They put a floor across the middle of it. It's the darndest thing I've ever seen, and it was very nicely done. And I wish them great success in their future at that particular endeavor. They saved that building. It's an iconic building for the city. And I'm glad the city and the developers and Hy-Vee was able to come together and keep that building there.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Klicka?
Nothing to report.
Mr. Ashcraft?
Nothing, sir.
Mr. Osterhaus?
No comments, thank you.
One item, a special thank you to all the Public Works and Parks folks who worked hard to get the snow removed after the blizzard over the weekend. And I say a special thank you to our crew. I think it was Monday morning I came in and I said, what time did you come on duty? Well, it was about 4 a.m. or 4:30 that they started taking care of the snow around our facilities here. So thanks to all of those. We are in recess, and we will reconvene in a few minutes to go through agenda review, followed by the executive session. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Whenever we're ready, Linda.
I was betting you can find him when the season comes around again. Yeah.
At this time, we'll call the order of the Board of County Commissioners meeting for the purpose of agenda review for next week's business session. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer. Commissioner Allen is absent. Commissioner Klicka.
Here.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Here.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Here.
Commissioner Brown is absent, and Chairman Eilert.
Here. We do have a quorum present. Would the clerk please read the one consent agenda item?
Item number 1, consider ratifying the chairman's appointment of Kevin Schutte to the Drug and Alcoholism Council of Johnson County, a program of United Community Services for a 3-year term from January 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2021.
Any reason not to leave that on consent? All right, next item.
Item number 2, consider approving the November 8th, 2018 business session minutes. Commissioner Allen was absent.
Okay, number 3. That will remain on action.
Consider adopting the 2019 Johnson County State Legislative Platform.
Cindy Green.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. We are preparing for the 2019 legislative session in Topeka, and we have been working on this actually for months. This is not just a project that we work on in the county manager's office. This is the departments throughout the county review this platform, give us suggestions of additions, deletions, help us update the information. Also with us today is our lobbyists that represent us over in Topeka, John Federico and Stephen Durst. So if you have additional questions for them, they are also here and available. But I'm just going to kind of run through the platform, and I sent you 2 copies of it. I actually sent you a red line copy so you could see what changes were from last year, and then I sent you a clean copy if that was easier to read and look through. But I'm going to use the red line copy, and I'm just going to kind of go through the highlights. I'm not going to touch everything where we updated numbers or such, but if you've got specific questions and we need to get answers that I don't have, we can also work on that. But the document's set up that anything that was red lettering is new additions. If it's been a strike through with red lettering, it's items that we deleted. And then things that are in green are actually things that are moved, because sometimes we'll have something that's been on the action agenda, but we know it's not going to make any progress, so we may keep it on a standing position or vice versa type of thing. So I'm going to start out just with the core principles. Those have remained the same other than updating some financial numbers in there. Under our action agenda, we actually did make a couple of changes to this. We took one item off, and that was in regards to our election commissioners, because we got that legislation passed last year thanks to the help of our lobbyist and a good effort across the state. But then we've added 2 items to it. So the ones that stayed on there is the property tax lid. And instead of focusing on trying to get that repealed, we've put that in a standing position to keep it as an option. We always want that repealed if that comes up. But we're going to focus this year on some of the exemptions that we would like added to it. The other one that remained on there is expansion of Medicaid. We have a new governor that will be sworn in January, and this has been on her platform, so we may see some progress there. The transportation plan, as the chairman mentioned, we've got 2 of our own commissioners over there help working on that, so we're hoping to get progress on that this year and get a new transportation plan in place and discuss funding. CAPERS' funding is going to remain on there because that's still important to us to make sure those past payments that were not made get caught up, and that we're also always trying to encourage them to help balance it by making the appropriate contributions to keep it balanced, because it gets out of balance sometimes because they're not making all the contributions that they should. So the 2 new items that we've added, one we've just moved up on the platform, and that's compensating use tax on remote sales. There was a U.S. Supreme Court decision this last year of South Dakota versus Wayfair, and it allows states to come in and make legislation that would allow you to collect sales tax on there. So we think this would be beneficial not just to us, but cities and the state entirety of being able to collect money that is due. It's not a new sales tax, it's just a tax that's due, and if you weren't paying it at the time of purchase online, you were supposed to be filling out line 19 on your income tax form and having it turned in there, but a small percentage of our population actually does that. So we're hopeful that that can make some movement this year. The other new one that we added was expansion of the Homestead Act and Safe Senior eligibility. These are a couple of programs that help people when they do file their income tax in regards to their property tax, to give some relief to people that are lower income and the elderly or people over 55, which is not elderly in my book. But those are some things that we would like to, help see some relief as we continue to see property taxes increase, because that's what homes are selling for in our region. It still is. We've had many of you commissioners mention that you've got your constituents that are, living in a home they've lived in forever, but their property taxes keep going up. So we thought if we helped increase some of the, either the income level or what they get as a refund, that maybe that could possibly help them along the way. If there's no questions on that, I'm going to go on into the second tier issues.
Go ahead.
Let me find my page here. I was just talking from the top of my head there now. Okay, so this is going to be on page 4 under 2.7 is where the second tier issues start. The tax policy, that we added some language about not making our county appraisers centralized. There's some discussion across the state of that, where the state would take that over and that would not be a county or a regional process, and we want to make sure that that remains this, that we have that ability here locally. Next, under it's section 2.10, the intellectual, no, it's 2.10, the intellectual and disabilities. We just kind of updated this language because we'd been requesting they maintain the 4% increase they gave us a couple years ago, and they've been doing that, so we're not going to just keep that in the language. So 2.11 is a new one. This is under the Secretary of State establishing consistent election guidelines for counting votes. This is some issues that we saw this year in the election cycles of every county doesn't get direct clarity always from the Secretary of State, and so we're asking that some consistency be placed in there. The next new item is 2.12, the predictable fees for Register of Deeds. Register of Deeds has been working on a process that they would like to make some of these flat fees instead of a separate fee based on number of pages, which makes it complex when someone's trying to register their mortgage. They don't know till the day or two before. Yes, sir.
Go ahead and finish. We'll come back to questions.
Okay. That they want flat fees instead of per page fees, and so they were working together as a group. We're not sure that's going to make progress now this year or not, but we wanted to go ahead and add it to our document in case this does get some potential for passage, because it would help us increase some of our fees, but more than anything, it would help make it easier just for everybody involved in that process. So next, I'm going to jump clear down to 3.9, which is on page 8, and this is under the motor vehicles. Which you've been aware they made the changes to license plates that they come out of a central location, but the decals do not come with them, that we've actually put this in our platform that we would like them to have the decals come along with the license plates. 3.18 is a new issue, and Commissioner Schaefer helped us with this. Consolidated Fire District Number 2 in Northeast Johnson County, they've actually got language in the statutes that they are supposed to have a board members of 7, and this was done at a time when they were going to increase and add the City of Merriam. City of Merriam never did end up joining their organization, but they've never changed the statutes. And so we've worked with legal, and they came up with some language that they thought was appropriate, that they could have 5 to 7 members. That way it leaves for some flexibility if they ever do add additional communities to their consolidated district. So we told them we would put that in our platform and help them out with that. I'm going to jump clear down to 3.28. This is some of the mental health issues that we've added. some different issues on there that we want to be able to help them. And this is just updating the language that we support the funding and resources of our psychiatric hospitals in Kansas while we still oppose the privatization of mental health hospitals. Second one is 3.29, and that's state funding for Rainbow Services, and then just a creation of some regional crisis stabilization units. And then also 3.3 is the support of juvenile crisis intervention centers. The next one is 3.32, and it's home and community-based services under CanCare that we would like, if they do make changes to the CanCare program, that the IDD families be able to remain with their current case managers and not be moved around. 3.36 is support funding of K-TRAC system, and this is a tracking of prescriptions and potential misuse of controlled substances. And then finally, the last new one that we added was support of Kansas Department of Health, Environment, and some of their child regulatory responsibilities and how they impact us, that we would be supportive of the changes that they are looking at making. So those are our changes for now, and so I stand for questions.
You have a question?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Get this thing to work. All right. Mr. Chairman, this is a lot of stuff. You know, normally I'm pretty easygoing when it comes to the platform here. But as I take a look at the past few years, my concern is no matter what platform or what recommendations we discuss up here and support, the level of support that we've gotten from the state of Kansas to even help us has been almost nil. I realize we need to have presence there. We need to get our point across. But I'm going to ask if we might defer this for about 2 weeks and allow for a study session, possibly next Thursday, to go into some of these, because some of the issues here, I guess I really want to know whether or not we want to put a lot of attention to it. If we're going to send our messengers and our staff up there, I'd like to focus on some things that we can really sink our teeth in and possibly get some changes done. I don't take away, I think we need to get rid of that darn tax lid. I think I had a conversation with finance director relative to DMV and the fees being charged. I'm trying to figure out where exactly that is in here, because right now we're heading down a path right now at that our collections for tags again, that we're again back into, I thought we were getting close to being self-sufficient in our operations there, and it's looking like we're about $500,000 backwards. So I want to make sure we can support that effort. But then there's some other things when it's getting into the appraisals and something like some of these areas that I really want to have a better understanding on before just giving a flat out to say, let it go forward. So I'm asking for a deferral for about 2 weeks, and if we could work in a study session possibly next Thursday.
I don't think that that cannot be done. I mean, next Thursday is the 6th, and we've got the 13th, so we could resolve on the 13th. But I think the issue you mentioned is always present. Every legislative platform I've gone through, the issues you raised are always present. But you know, there are specific things I think that we can focus on, but I do think it's important to have a broader platform position where when issues come up that we are unaware of or unexpected in the legislature, at least there's some position that we can advocate. So,
and I don't disagree with you. I just feel like I need a little bit. We have two commissioners here, two commissioners that aren't here, that I think a little bit more discussion on this. And I guess I throw this to you all. Is there a time factor that we have to have this approved by next week?
I don't think there is. I mean, the session does not begin until after January, and we have meetings the 6th, the 13th, and the 20th before the holidays intervene. So there is still time, I think. Cindy, is that right?
Well, there would be time. The 13th, we are meeting with our local delegation, so we typically like to
You're
have it
right.
approved.
And I think in generally speaking, though, we know what our top priorities have been, whether it's dealing with Medicare, whether it's dealing with the tax lid and a few of these other things. But I'd like to at least get our program to the point that we could stay focused on it. And I understand we want our lobbyists to be at least able to respond to certain issues there, knowing our feeling. But I'd like to see how we can push the button on the things that are more important to us.
Well, I would suggest this. Let's take time next week to have a larger conversation. I don't know that we need a study session, but next week agenda seemed to be fairly short, so there should be opportunity. And
I'm
then
fine with
schedule
that.
action on the 13th, which would give us a program to submit to our legislative delegation.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Ashcraft?
Somewhat along those lines, and I'm fine with delaying or extending the discussion a week. Is there anything in here about addressing issues that have been reoccurring related to sales tax on food and medicine? And do we have a position for, neutral, or against any discussions in those areas? I just didn't, and I will confess, I have not read it word for word, but I just didn't see anything in there.
We have not taken in the past a position on eliminating or reducing sales tax on food. And part of it was the state's been discussing it, but they've been talking about doing it on their piece of the sales tax. And we didn't feel like we could go tell them to do that when we haven't taken that up as a position here in Johnson County of eliminating food and sales tax on the portion that we have control over the sales tax. But
Well, that could very well be a legislative item. I've heard that from several sources, and I just didn't know what our position was. But related to that was a question I was going to ask, and I think the deferment of the decision on this agenda would be helpful here. I was wondering if we had prepared any fiscal notes on these items. Ms. Green, you had mentioned a couple of things, that there would be certain increases in fees and costs, but have we done an analysis in terms of what the impact would be, either pro or con for the county or taxpayer or whoever would be impacted by some of these decisions? Is that part of the decision-making process when we put these together?
we have not done that for each item that is in this document. There's a few things, like when I was talking about the Register of Deeds, their group has put together some numbers of the impact on Johnson County on that specific issue.
Well, and part of the reason I raised this is I had the opportunity yesterday to visit with TFM, Mr. Franzen, director, and the fiscal impact that that one item would have. And then just listening to you, I mean, I'm very sensitive about these potentials for hidden tax increases, whether broadly or specifically on certain audiences. You talked about for the appraiser's office and as one, and there may be a logic and a justification for that, but I'd like to understand it, because it just becomes honestly too much, and to support it or to oppose it, I'd like to have a better understanding of that.
And sometimes when there's not a fiscal note, it's a local control issue for us.
Fair enough.
And that's what it is with the appraiser, I think, more than a fiscal note on that one. But Mr. Franzen has shared with me some of their financial numbers that they've looked at in regards to some of the work that they do for the state that they're required to do, so.
Because even the homestead exemption, while I think makes a lot of sense in some realms, would have a fiscal impact, and that burden, that cost burden will then have to be addressed or shifted somehow, I'm thinking. And how big is that? How quickly, or would we advocate, or is that whatever we might have?
I think there needs to be an understanding of where these issues are at right now. For instance, the homestead exemption is a state exemption. There is not a local impact. You talk about the sales tax exemption. The state sales tax is what, 6%? And so when they talk about reducing the sales tax on food or pharmaceuticals, it's that 6%, not the local. And as to the Register of Deeds issues, this issue was raised by those, I would call them mortgage title companies who have to deal with the paperwork. And they did not want to have to continue to deal with all the different charges that are involved, but want one charge. So that was a grounds up from those who have to use that service. And there's an issue involving oil and gas, which kind of put the brakes at this point on that item. So, you know, there's more than just an initial fiscal impact, because in some cases it's not our impact, but state government. Mr. Osterhaus.
I wonder if we might be able to send our mental health items to Mr. Clark to let him know kind of what we're doing in regards to mental health and what we've asked for from the state, because I think a lot of those address some of the issues that he spoke about this morning. So I don't know if we can, I'm sure we have his email address somewhere, because I know he's emailed us before. That might be helpful for him to get a better idea of what the county is doing in regards to mental health, and also maybe just the numbers that we've increased our mental health budget over the last, I know over the last at least 5 years, we've had some pretty substantial increases. So I think that might be helpful for him. Back on I think it was 211, I think that's what I wrote down. That was the election, the consistent election. I know that there were, this year was the first year in a long time they haven't used Crosscheck. Crosscheck is their platform where they, with some other states, and they look for duplicate voters in multiple states. And I know there were some issues with that, but if we could get maybe some clarification on should we or should we not be using Crosscheck, because I know in conversations with the election commissioner that in years past, they've hired people to, on a part-time basis, to research these records and make sure we don't have people duplicate voting. And I think the numbers he gave me were 3,700 for the 2016, and then 4,200 records in Johnson County for this last election, or excuse me, 2017. So there's some pretty substantial numbers of potential duplicate voters, and for some reason they didn't do that this year. I did call the Secretary of State's office, and they have not responded to my calls and emails about why they didn't provide that this year, although I think in a conversation with the chairman there may have been some issues with the Crosscheck, and so if they're not going to do that, I think that should be part of the conversation as well. If they're not going to provide that anymore, that gives Ronnie some clarification on whether or not he needs to hire those people and check for duplicate records. So,
yeah. Mr. Jarrett, perhaps you can speak to this. It's my understanding there was even some issues of concern by the Department of Homeland Security by that process, which was had a lot of issues. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, there were a number of issues about the Crosscheck, because when they're sending that information to multiple states, is it then protected information, and some of that privacy information was getting out, including portions of people's Social Security numbers. So there were a lot of questions about the sharing of that information and how it was being protected once it was being sent to other individuals. So there was also litigation involved in that Crosscheck program because of the inaccuracies that was resulting from it.
I think that was one of the issues why the Secretary of State did not provide that service. Yes.
well, with the new Secretary of State, is there a way we can? Yeah, right. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Follow on to my earlier comment. I would be interested in whatever fiscal notes, and I think the chairman raised some valid points, but I would like to try to understand that. And Mr. Chairman, even though it is a state effort on the sales tax related to food, and I don't know if medicine's included in that or not.
I don't know.
But do we have a position, or will they drive it solely? And if they lower it, we would lower it. I guess it's a package. It's all or nothing. Is that right? Is that how that works?
That would be a decision involving the state sales tax. I would not want the county to get in a position of saying, you do this, and we're not going to do that. So I think it's a decision that the state legislature has to consider without our input. And a lot of that depends upon, I think, what happens to state revenues. Recently, they've gone up significantly, so, and I am sure the statewide numbers are available. And maybe, John, Mr. Federico, can you give us a idea of where that discussion's at and what's likely to happen, perhaps?
On reducing the sales tax on food?
Right.
I think that'll be one of the highest priorities. The numbers are good. Revenues are up. There's a lot of needs. There's a lot of campaign promises that will have to be kept. I think the main focus will be K through 12 education. Higher education will get a look, and CAPERS. Those are the three big high-dollar items that the legislature would consider first. We're still waiting on recommendations from the Transportation Task Force. That will come at a pretty a big price tag as well. What's left, I think, will be lowering that sales tax on food.
So it may drop to the end of the line, so to speak, of
Well,
these other items?
I think it's highly desirable, but it's expensive, even a small percentage reduction. If I might, I think they will start conversations and prioritize that perhaps in the 2020 legislative session, which is an election year. I don't mean to be cynical, but I can see that easily slipping to 2020.
Anything else that you and Stephen would like to offer about the proposed platform that's been mentioned this morning?
Well, I think the points are valid on both sides. There's a lot on these pages. And quite honestly, when we came on board, I didn't sleep for about 2 weeks when I looked at the enormity of the effort. But it is helpful to prioritize them. So there are higher priority. And to your point, Mr. Chairman, it is helpful to us where there is a stated position by the county on some of these items as they come up. Some of them need maybe to be refined a little bit, maybe eliminated, but the number of them is actually helpful to us. So as you pare it down, it saves us the steps to call Cindy to find out where the county stands on issue A, issue B, issue C. So as long as there is a agreed upon set of priorities among the items you have here, it's very helpful to us.
Okay. Questions, Mr. Ashcraft?
Well, I'm just trying to understand, Mr. Chairman. So are you advocating that we remain neutral on any discussions related to sales tax by the state?
I would say so if, in fact, they are not going to be seriously considered in 2019. I think
that is speculation,
I think
Mr.
a
Chairman.
priority, or if the discussion is not going to occur until 2020, in my judgment, I think we need to focus on the homestead exemption or some similar activity which affects seniors and property tax. I think, I don't know, I received my bill yesterday, was up about 10%. I'm in the Shawnee Mission School District. There was a total mill levy reduction. There were 4 or 5 entities who reduced their mill levies, small reductions. I think compared to last year, there was a total reduction of 2 mills in the total mill levy. So if your appraised value went up 10%, then your tax bill went up 8%, basically. And that's going to vary from district to district because of the school levies. So even though our effort and some efforts of other taxing jurisdictions again resulted in a reduction in the mill levy, property taxes still went up. And for those retirees on fixed incomes, that's an issue, and I think we need to pay attention to it. So that would be my assessment.
And I agree with your comments on the mill levy and the property taxes. I'm just, so will we have something in the in our platform that says we have no position on sales tax this session or at this time?
I guess my reaction would be if it does come up seriously under consideration, then do we need to examine what the proposal is and take action then?
We don't typically have, when we're neutral on an issue, we either have support and oppose in our platform.
Right.
So until we get a specific proposal, we're not going to say yay or nay.
Well, I think it might be helpful, John, if I know the numbers are out there and you mentioned them. The state has done some work on the impact on state revenues. Perhaps that information could be shared with the commission. Is that possible?
Happy to do that.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a way to translate it for
Yeah.
our
There should be a fairly simple process.
Yeah.
And Mr. Chairman, I think if you're going to be studying any of these proposals on that particular issue, we can also see what information we can get as far as a likely priority of the legislature and movement on that issue. So we'll get you more information for your next meeting.
All right. Thank you. Other questions?
Clarification. Could you expand that not just to that issue, but the issues you listed and any others? Because I think your point on the property tax, if that's going to be a high priority item, I think we need to be well prepared for that.
Okay. Well, we can get specific data on that also. Again, as I recall, the current tax exemption, depending upon income level and age, you can get a variance in the reduction in your state income tax. Is that right? Something like that. So it'll be difficult to really get an accurate count depending upon age, income, and level of benefit.
We could ask them to provide the numbers for the income homestead exemptions that were given for 2017. I would think that number would be available to get that kind of information, so we get an idea of how much are they returning to seniors.
And if you could provide us in layman's term an outline of what the current exemption includes and how that's applied.
I could do that.
Okay. Any other questions?
I appreciate the discussion here that we're going to have next week. Thanks, Cindy.
John, Stephen, anything else you'd like to leave us with as far as looking at 2019 legislative session? Or would you rather not predict? That would be my position, but.
It's just very briefly, there was a 23% turnover in the House, none in the Senate, although there will be replacing 3 senators because of the elections, so that will be interesting. So we're dealing with a lot of new people. What we're all interested in right now is getting information about what these priorities are. But we're a little early because they're going to have leadership elections, and depending on the outcome of that, they may or may not switch or change out committee chairs, committee members. So these are all the things that we're going to be focused on between now and the start of the January 14th session. Also, with the transition between the administration, again, the transition team are placing people. What we plan on doing within the next week, maybe before you meet next Thursday, we'll have information on how the administration and cabinet secretaries are shaping up. So we're in full information gathering mode right now. It's just a little bit tricky on the timing.
Okay. Well, let me simply add, thank you for your work on our behalf the last session. I'm not so sure we'd have been successful with the election progress that we made without your assistance. So we appreciate that kind of effort and ideas and guidance that you gave us last year on some issues. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you for being here today. Appreciate it. So there will be further discussion on the legislative platform at our meeting next week with the objective of adoption on December 13.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you all. Next item.
Item number 4, resolution numbers 100-18, plat exception numbers 12-06-18, A and B, SW-RN2-3432, and SW-PP-FP-3433GA. Consider a request from Garrison Flum Jr. applicant and Calucas Properties landowner to rezone approximately 10 acres located at 16295 Gardner Road from RUR, Rural District, to RN2, Residential Neighborhood 2 District, and preliminary and final plat, the property into 2 residential lots to be known as Plum Acres.
Jeff.
Good morning, Mr.
Jay.
Chairman, members of the Commission. Jay Leipzig, Planning Director. This item is brought before you. It came out of the Southwest Consolidated Zoning Board. That body met on October 24th, 2018. Recommended approval of this item. Staff is also recommending approval of this item. It does include 2 waivers, direct access to a Carnap Arterial of Gardner Road, which is an existing driveway, and also allowing the current owner to not connect with a sanitary sewer, just keep a septic system. Also 2 plat exceptions, depth to width ratio, and also to allow Gardner Road and 162nd Terrace to remain in their current condition.
Questions? All right, thank you. Next item.
Item number 5, consider renewing contracts relating to transit services with Reveal Management Services Incorporated, First Transit Incorporated, and 1010 Taxi for an additional 2-year terms at a total cost not to exceed $8,592,011 for 2019 and a total cost not to exceed $8,849,771 for 2020.
Mr. Powers.
Chairman, Commissioners, good morning. Josh Powers from the Manager's Office. This item pertains again to the 3 contracts with our transportation vendors. As you will recall, the original contract with these vendors was entered into in 2014 for an initial 3-year period, and each contract included provisions for 2 2-year options for extension. I was before you 2 years ago, almost to the day, asking for approval to exercise the first set of options. This set of options is the last set of options to be exercised under the contract. Reveal Management Services provides coordinated dispatching and scheduling for our transit operations. First Transit serves as the operator of our services for our fixed and commuter routes, our Freedom, formerly Special Edition service, and for Swift. And 1010 Taxi provides our door-to-door on-demand service. Exercising options such as these are useful in extending existing contracts and providing continuity of service for our customers, but these renewals are not submitted in a vacuum and they're not assumed to be automatic. Each contract provides performance standards specific to the service being provided, including on-time performance, pickup time performance, and in-vehicle riding time performance metrics. In regard to the on-time and pickup performance metrics, the contract calls for a KPI of 95% of trips to meet the standard. In 2017, the vendors achieved an average of 97.21%, and for 2018, that number rises to 97.45%, so beating the metrics called for in the contract. In regard to the in-vehicle standard, the contract calls for 99% of trips on Freedom or Swift to not exceed either 60 or 90 minutes pertaining to some parameters. In 2018, the vendors achieved a 99.8% success rate. Similarly, the contract calls for vehicle interiors and exteriors to be cleaned on a regular prescribed basis, and for preventative maintenance to be performed within 10% of either the county's or the manufacturer's prescribed intervals, which for us is every 3,000 or 6,000 miles, depending on the type of vehicle. Our First Transit maintenance shop is what's called Blue Seal certified. That's a designation given by the National Institute for Automotive Service Excellence, with technicians having to recertify every 5 years. The total contract amounts for all three vendors for both years, 19 and 20, is $17,441,782. In conjunction with the Johnson County Transportation Council and the KCATA, and in light of the fact that the vendors have beaten the KPIs outlined in the contract, staff recommends approval of exercising these contract options. And with that, I'm happy to stand for questions.
Mr. Clickham?
Mr. Chairman, I'm having some challenge with this. Josh, you were kind enough to send us some information this week, which I do appreciate. I appreciate it a whole lot, which starts making me question whether or not I'm ready to sign off on a 2-year contract. Here's the questions. Number one, you know that I've been a strong advocate of transit, but I've been a very strong advocate of finding different ways to deal with transit, being the microtransit. And I did read from your report that I know JCTC is working on some issues dealing with microtransit for next year. With that is supposed to be a whole lot cheaper type of transportation that we're providing in this county. So just arbitrarily going for a $600,000 or $800,000 increase over the next 2 years makes me concerned. With that in mind, too, here's something that lends to the argument that I've had. I've had difficulties with 40, 45 passenger buses running up and down on routes. Well, what you did very, very well. You outlined what the passengers and ridership is for each one of the routes, but what you did as a compliment to you, you identified the number of passengers per hour and per mile on them. And we're running anywhere from 3, 4, 5 people on a 45 passenger bus. To me, does not make economic sense. When we could redirect those resources in other ways to help the public transit. I don't want to pull money away from public transit. I just want to have a better return on our investment. So therefore, Mr. Chairman, this is another one. I'd like to at least ask for a week's deferral to give Josh a chance to kind of present to us different options, whatever. At the least, I'm okay in going for maybe 1 year to allow transition for an extension. But going 2 years at this, it's just delaying the drive in pushing to where I feel we need to be going.
Well, Josh, let me ask you directly, the concerns that Mr. Clickham mentioned, does that relate to the availability of equipment or the inability to schedule equipment?
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, thank you for the question. As the board will remember, we've talked several times with the transit, myself and KCATA, that we are right-sizing our fleet, and that's just a factor of the existing fleet and the time that it gets to get new vehicles in here. As you know, there's a 12 to 18-month lead time on ordering and production of a vehicle before we get it. So as we have described before, we are trying to replace the 45-foot and 40-foot buses with 30-foot buses, and then smaller, newer vehicles like the Transit Connects vehicles where possible. So we've got 5 of the new Connects that have been delivered are in service, and we'll continue to do that with the larger buses with our CPI program going forward. But it is just a factor of time in getting them in. I would say that we can certainly defer according to your wishes. This contract does expire at midnight on December 31st. So I do have assurances from our vendors that they would not walk away. There would be a transition period, but we do want to have this matter adjudicated before the end of the year.
Well, let me ask you this, Josh. If there is a desire for a 1-year contract versus 2 years, we'd like to know if there's any downside to that.
From my perspective, what that does, it does change substantially the time frame of getting an RFP together to look for a new service to replace what we have now. To Commissioner Klicka's point, what we are going to be bringing a microtransit pilot for your consideration on the December 20 session. And so we would like to have that, per your decision, available to begin early 2019, not just to be thought about 19, but a pilot that would operate almost immediately beginning after the year. We've been in touch with the vendor, and that is ready to go, but we would need time to assess cost, efficacy, efficiency before we could say that this could replace fixed route service.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
I'm getting to the point here, and Josh, I know you've been trying to push this issue from a number of times. This is not something I'm sitting here hitting you on. But I've been arguing this issue for probably as long as I've been on this commission, because I know the county manager and I've had serious conversations about the cost and various types of services that we can be providing here. But the concern I'm having, we'd be better off parking some of these 45 passenger buses, getting a modified or a transit attractive van that's operating on more than half these routes, and therefore reducing our operating costs, which would still have a net probably decrease in operating costs, even if we park some of these transit coaches. I just, if I don't put the line in the sand here at some point, we're just going to keep going, and there's no sense of urgency or a desire to get this thing pushed. And I think that message needs to be out there.
I appreciate your thoughts there, Commissioner. I assure you that the sense of urgency I feel is being communicated to ATA, and I don't mean to offer any excuses, but as I mentioned at a recent...
I'm not even asking for that. It's just, you know, this has been a hot button.
Yes, sir.
But I think at this point, maybe it's time we take a breather here, even if it's for a week or two, just to kind of re-strategize how we want to take this contract and go from here.
Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Clarify for me, Mr. Klicka said that there was a $600,000 increase, and it looks like it's only $250,000 by my math. Am I missing something?
Can you point me to what exact increase you're talking about in the contract?
Mr. Klicka said something about a $600,000, and
I think I can speak to that. So it appears when you look at just the raw numbers, the difference between the contract amount in 18 to 19, there is in excess of $648,000 increase. That's a little more nuanced than it appears, because in the 2016 budget, you will remember that we had a request for additional resources for Metcalf and 75th Street. Part of that was $300,000 for evening service. That service didn't get turned on until this year. And so the contract amount reflects that additional $300,000. Additionally, in 2018, we came to the board for an RAR for $300,000 for the Gardner-Edgerton route to serve LPKC. That's the other $300,000. And then we also had money from KDOT that we had to provide a local match to in the amount of $48,000 to turn on the 596 Three Trails route. So when you add in that $648,000 and a CPI of 2.9%, that's the difference.
Okay, very good. Mr. Chairman, I would tend to agree with Mr. Klicka. I had the opportunity yesterday to visit with Mr. Powers in terms of the extension of this contract, and I appreciate that he kind of showed the performance indicators and that they have met and are attempting to address. But Mr. Klicka's comments, I think, are more systemic, and quite honestly, I think, go to the heart of the issue. And I hate to say big box buses, but that has been a bane in my existence for years, and that's the point you were making when ridership on many of these routes is a sedan.
And Commissioner,
but the larger point is, if you only have 3 or 4 riders on a route, why do you continue that route?
And
thank you.
I think we're saying
we're all heading in the same direction.
I mean, forget about whether it's a van or a large bus. Why do we not make a route adjustment
The argument I keep bringing here, and I think I've been making this for at least about 3 years, no one on this dais is more pro-transit than I am. But I want to get more transit out there. I want more flexibility for our citizens. But the model we're doing now is heading us down a tube that we're going to go through drastic cuts and accessibility issues. Because as we keep, what is this, $7-8 million a year we're putting into transit, and when you look at the ridership, and on an average daily ridership, it's 2,000 people. Divide that by 2, let's assuming that they're making an inbound and outbound trip, that's 1,000 people a day. And using such a huge capitalization to do that, I don't think we're doing ourselves a favor, and we could kill the concept of transit. And I don't want to do that.
I just would like to offer a couple very quick points. You'll recall that we were in front of the board both in a study session and at other times with a comprehensive operations analysis. Those suggestions and recommendations will be back in front of the board in January. Includes suspending existing routes, those low productive routes, getting rid of those and reinvesting that savings into more frequency, as well as our capital program. So the chairman is absolutely right. When we have a low productive route, we are actively looking to make those changes. Secondarily, we are at the bleeding edge of suburban type areas looking at microtransit. No one in the country in an area like ours is doing anything beyond what we're looking at now. The initial report when we first took a run at the microtransit pilot was that it was going to cost $750,000 for a 6-month pilot. That would make it far and away our most expensive project. We went back, we tweaked, we worked with the vendor, and we got that down to $250,000. The point that I would make is we're pushing as hard as we can, but wanting to make sure that it's going to be cost effective. We're happy to take as much time as the board needs to look at this and drill down on it. Staff recommendation and the JCTC unanimously recommended that these options be extended purely because the service that we received over the last 2 years has exceeded what we asked them to do. We feel like the service is good. The policy things that you're rightfully highlighting, that's on myself and KCATA, and we agree with what you're saying.
I can't endorse signing off on 2 years of commitments.
Understood.
And, you know, as I said, I might be amenable to at least 1 year to allow for transition. And I don't care what the microtransit deal, we could be running we take a look at what we're doing with mental health in some of these other areas, it's a whole lot cheaper than what we're doing with the public transit side. Josh, I don't want to keep.
Understood.
Let's take some time on this.
Let me underscore. We're receiving private sector contributions
on top of
that mental health transportation. Now, you know, that's another issue. So, Josh, thank you for reminding us that this conversation is not a new one, but we've had at least one or two study sessions involving this. So, this will be on the action agenda for next week.
Action, or can I ask for deferred at least 1 week to allow Josh to figure out how he might package this in a little bit different way?
Well, that's up to the majority. If it stays on
I
action
just don't want to
agenda-
just shut this thing down. That's
If it
my
stays on action
concern.
agenda, it can be continued next week.
Okay.
So,
I'm good with continuing,
Yeah.
Mr.
all right,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Are there any other items?
No, sir.
All right, that concludes our agenda review. We need to reconvene into open session and adjust the time on the executive session. We currently are at 11:34. If we can begin at 11:35, same time on. Yes, Mr. Osterhaus.
I'll move that the board recess its open meeting and convene an executive session at 11:35 a.m. for a total of 40 minutes, with a period of 25 minutes for the purpose of discussing personnel matters of non-elected officials and protection of privacy, and for a period of 15 minutes for the purpose of receiving the advice of counsel and to preserve attorney-client privilege, and to reconvene an open session in this room at approximately 12:15 or soon thereafter as the executive session may end.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to recalculate the time period for the executive session. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner and Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. We will begin the executive session immediately. The record will reflect that at approximately 12:15 p.m., we reconvened in open session. Mr. Klicka, do you have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to provide our auditor a 3% merit increase effective first pay period in 2019.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the merit increase. Any questions or discussion? There being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer. Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. That concludes any business we have. We are adjourned. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you.